Welcome to another episode of Corporate CPR, where we breathe life back into your organization, projects, and processes, giving you insights to recovery and avoiding corporate mortality events. Today, we'll be talking about how employees' expectations of their companies have shifted and how companies' mindsets might have to change in order to stay relevant. And joining us to contribute to the conversation is Chuck Hogan. Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you for having me, Jan.
Yeah, can you share a little bit about your background?
Certainly. So I've been involved in corporate America, if you will, in sales and marketing for the better part of 35 years, working with architectural interior design companies. I've also been involved in mortgage brokerage banking and by educational background, finance, real estate law, but my passion happens to be neurostrategist, neurolinguistics programming, neurosocial conditioning. So human behavior. I find it to be so intriguing. So for the last 30 years, that's where I spent a lot of time, most notably in some environments with Tony Robbins, as well as several other, I'll say, highlight strategists. And yeah, we'll go with that in the world of, I'll say, life enhancement and growth.
Excellent. And so we're talking a little bit about how employees really are showing up to the workplace and how they're engaging with their employers. What trends have you noticed as of recently, shifts in mindset?
Great question. There's been huge shifts in relation to when we start to look at some of our aspirational figures of the past. You know, when we think back of business books and we go, there's Think and Grow Rich, there's the Carnegies, the Vanderbilts, the Rothschilds. And those were a very different time in enterprise where people went to work for a company. And for many folks, if it was an IBM ideology, they expected to go ahead and retire with the same company. They were going to get the golden watch, they were going to get the huge pension fund and right off into the sunset. Well, expectations have changed a little bit. And in fact, I have two kids in college right now, which is, thank you. I'll take any prayers and GoFundMe's at this point. It's an amazing experience to go through. And one of the fastest trends that I understood statistically was information that my son learned as a freshman. After he finished his junior year, it was already antiquated. And it was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't remember learning about finance, real estate law, and everything I learned as a freshman was already antiquated. In fact, it was even still practical and practicum when I graduated and went to go get my master's. And I was like, okay, this is confusing to me. So this is the truth. Technology is advancing at such a rapid rate that we're seeing the expectations of individuals who are going in with great pedigree, Wharton School of Business, Harvard Law School, Harvard Business School, that shows capacity. It does not show acumen. And so we're seeing folks now where online courses, they're getting certified in Python, they're getting certified in different, business languages as well as computative languages. So if they're Apple certified, iOS certified or Microsoft certified, I go, that's all great, but that technology is changing so fast. Think about how many updates your iPhone or your Android gets on a continual basis. It's like, are you kidding me? Again, another one? So why do I go there? Well, the expectations of all this great talent that we're acquiring going to corporate America have very different ideologies as to what compensation, career, and I'm not going to call it work-life balance because I actually believe it's more harmony that we're seeking. And so Simon Sinek talks about this, and I love him for this. It's a great insight and distinction. He claimed that there's a lot of people, and I agree with this, that are living in old school was finite mindset. You work for X number of years, you graduate, you get the gold watch, you're out of there. And it was presupposed by three different distinctions. One was that, number one, you know all the players in the game. You're an executive, you know your team, they don't change very often. Hakuna Matata, life is good. Two, there's rules to the game. And if you break the rules, there's penalties. Very straightforward. And then three, the object of the game was to win. And you're only winning or losing. There's no draw. So the new ideology that I'll call it more a millennial zennial mindset is an infinite mindset, which is one, you only know some of the players. They're constantly changing. Depends on what ecology you're moving through. Two, there's no rules. There's only value alignment. And that is when we understand the overall scope, this is one of the reasons why millennials love just causes. Anything that is a just cause or a movement. We saw this with GameStop and AMC and The Big Short and all these different, movies. And why is it important to note? Because when we see this, that was all a movement around doing the right thing for the right reasons and being compelled, even at taking losses, because you're going to lose some soldiers in battle. And boy, they were going to live through martyrdom, and they're going to make sure, but it's a just cause. It's worth it. And then the third thing is that there's no winning the game or losing the game. There's only how long you get to stay in the game. And so there's this kind of transitional ideology that's been occurring. And so the average person is only staying in a position from anywhere from 2 years to 4 years maximum. If I were to look at my resume growing up, I changed positions a handful of times. Theirs, they're like, oh, and it's not uncommon now. If I were to interview someone in today's climate, I'd be go, oh, in the last 10 years, you've had 4, almost 5 different positions. Holy smokes. Well, that's me in the last 40 years. So how did things change so diametrically? Well, companies' expectations changed. We started having this ideology, even in larger corporations, that we could contract people, that not everyone needed to be an employee. We didn't have to have these, I'll say, set in fixed costs for FICA, FICO, Medicare, Medicaid, health benefits, compensation for drive time, all these different things. And the consequence of that has been, we started to hire specifically to meet silos that were perceived opportunities within our marketplace. And when we got that done, then we're like, next. So either their contract was complete, which they were fine with, or they would renew a contract or transition into another sector or division because they saw that they had talent and skill. What I started to notice is that there's this kind of chameleon-like presence and identity, because we all have different identities. Who you are as a daughter, or as a significant other, or as a parent, or as a CEO, CFO, COO are different. So in corporate, I'm a CEO, but I'm not a CEO in my home. I'm daddy and a husband. And so these identity shifts really start to become very pervasive and create a massive amount of conflict. Here's why. We had this little event a couple of years ago called COVID. And this forced stay-at-home order, there were a lot of folks who were trying to figure out, how do I get to be present and to create and do my job and get paid for my services while I'm in this space? And I go, well, that's very simple. Do your job. But they weren't having to go in the office. So 2.5 years later of consistency, and now they're being called back in the office, and I go, I haven't had to change out of my Lululemon in 2.5 years. I have not had to prepare lunch or eat out of the cafeteria at work in 2.5 years. I love my food. I love my freedom and getting my work done. Life is amazing. And so now corporate America is ringing the bell again and going, hey, time to come home. Dinner's on. We need everybody here. We're looking for collaboration, and so we can consult. And it's so much more difficult. You don't get this energy when we're just online all the time. You get a measure of it, but you don't get the same proximity as power. And so they're calling people back in, and now they're getting pushback. And they go, well, it's not worth the money. It's not worth my time. I'm going to go elsewhere. So companies are now going, maybe we need to hybridize. I just experienced this at a very large computer company outside of Austin. I was down in their offices. 3/4 of the building is shelled. Brand new computers, brand new workstations, brand new systems, brand new seating, all wrapped in plastic. No one is in the office. And yet they're still functioning. And it's a large name brand that we would all recognize if I said it. Now, why do I go there? Well, they have found that in order to acquire and keep talent, that they've had to hybridize themselves. And in order to meet people's levels of expectation and fulfillment, there's a difference between the science of success, which means SOPs to actually indoctrinate, work, and push an organization of several thousand employees in the right direction, plus inviting them, because we don't always want to be, the taskmaster. We want to make sure that we're enticing. And on the flip side, that a lot of people have developed skills adaptively where they're really, really, really good at stuff, but they don't like doing it. Going, yeah, I'm really good at this, but it's so boring. I'm not really enthused. I'm not fulfilled by it. And so these folks are looking for exactly what in the beginning of our conversation, they're looking for a just cause because they keep throwing money at them and they're like going, we don't get it. We're giving you everything that you want, but they're not giving them what they need. And this is a huge defining factor. And they go, aren't those the same things? I said, oh, nay, nay. No, they're not. They're very different, actually. You need air, water, food, shelter, and love and connection. What you want is to meet all those things in the way that you want to meet them. Not in the way that someone's like going, oh, but we've got all your needs covered. If we cover all your needs, then your wants change. I said, that is true. But you're offering them a Porsche, and what they really want is a Tesla 3. And they're like, wait, what? But I'm giving you a Porsche. Oh, no. I like electric cars. I'm behind Elon. We're moving towards industrialization that doesn't require fossil fuels. A just cause, much bigger. They like it. And so these things are propagating changes in emergence. And they go, well, isn't that just a difference of opinion? I go, yes. And it's more than an opinion, it's a lifestyle. How many people are you seeing wearing three-piece suits to work now? It's an interesting thing because one of the things that's happened is interior designers and architects, as an example, just fun fact, they are having to reconstitute how they design spaces because folks that are actually in the office are wearing blue jeans most often. And so now, instead of having dress down Fridays, which was the only day you could actually wear jeans in the past, they have 5 times the blue jean dye transfer exposure from blue jeans migrating onto upholstery pieces. And they need to design. It's mind-blowing. It's like, who thinks of this stuff? Oh, when you have to deal with the drama, you think of it. And so this is where we start to see, it's like there's so much more to retaining employees. This is one of the reasons why the big 3, Microsoft, Google, Apple, they have full cafeterias. They have napping pods. They have places where you can go to decompress, where you can actually almost do like literally yoga, Pilates. My brother works for Apple as an example, and I know for a fact the campus is remarkable. They make it so enticing. So if you need a beverage, they have their own barista, for the love of Pete. Starbucks, El Fresco is going to go ahead and make you whatever cappuccino, espresso, Americano, whatever you want. And I go, that is amazing. And why? Because now if the needs are being met at the highest level, they're finding that productivity goes up, that the happiness quotient goes up. And that's something in the past that people go, oh, happiness is woo-woo. Just get your job done. That's kind of an IBM ideology. Hey, if you don't like it, there's the door, but you're going to give away your pension and everything else. I go, I'm just going to stick it out. I'm going to stick it out because I'm going to put in my 30 and I'm going to get that gold watch. Those days are gone.
Absolutely. You kind of hit on a few things. You mentioned, though, that this idea that that maybe it's almost becoming a bit of a gig economy, where people, can be subcontracted or whatever, and people and companies can flex. But I'm wondering how much of culture starts to get lost if you're made up of too many independent people, because you can't treat them like employees like that. That's how companies get themselves in trouble, is, that whole treating an IC like an employee, and then they're owed all that stuff that you were trying to avoid. So do you think as well, though, that because of that, there'd start to be a culture deterioration?
I think there already has been. And what we're starting to see is that in this transmigration, that loyalty is only as good as the dollar offered. And that a lot of these deals, and they go, but you just said just causes. I said, well, it's kind of a conjoined effort. And so there's this point of diminishing return. If I were to look at it like a scale and go, if the offer is big enough, then they'll go ahead and be willing to give up certain modalities for a period of time. But what they're going to be looking for is, it doesn't mean they don't stop asking for this. And so really, I've seen where people, and I've actually had this with companies where they've actually put out offer letters to skilled talent, and they got a verbal okay, yes. And then 3 weeks later, the person still hasn't showed up. And then when they finally track them down, like, oh, I took another position. They're like, wait, what? And this is the craziest part. They go, we offered you 150K. And they go, yes, they offered us 160. And they're like, okay, but we also gave you immediately health benefits, a car, expense account, medical, dental, vision. You'd be fully vested into the organization and the retirement fund. And they're like going, yeah, but I like the 160 better. It's a contractor gig. I'm only in it for 2 years, and then I can decide what I want to do. So what did that tell me? And my friend, we'll call him John Smith for the sake of argument. John was like, Chuck, what do I do? And I said, let him go. He goes, what? He goes, no, 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 no. I said, John, let him go. Because he's not going to be happy with all of your rules that you have. Because I said, you're a nurturer. You're a mentor. That's what you do. I said, quite frankly, my friend, you hired this guy because he's an independent. And what he actually values more than your guidance is his freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, holy smokes. He goes, I would never be able to influence him. I said, no, because you're dangling what you think he needs. And this is what happens in relationships, both personal and professional. I gave them everything. No, I gave them everything. No, you gave each other everything but what you needed. You gave what you thought the other party wanted. And this is where people start to have this dichotomy, because what's lacking right now, to your point, is communication, clear, concise communication. And when we are onboarding talent, because that's really what we're doing, it's talent acquisition. We need to identify what their natural by their adaptive personalities are. And people go, I don't get it. I go, well, I saw your beautiful cat. I go, are you a cat person, dog person, or both? And they go, oh, you can't be both. I said, sure you can. I love all animals. So that's not an issue. Cats and dogs can live together. Seen it happen. And so why do I go there? I said, that's someone who has an infinite mindset. That's someone who's like a possibilities. If progress equals happiness, what feeds progress is possibilities. Took me a long time to get this distinction, by the way. And people go, what do you mean? I said, well, whenever we feel like there's compelling future and opportunity, we don't feel like there's a glass ceiling over us. That's a noteworthy or worthy cause, because now that feeds three narratives. It feeds freedom, progress, and possibilities. Ooh, powerful. Go, yes, it is. What's the other side? I said, when you feel like there's no possibility, so now you're living in this box, you feel cloistered, you start to feel claustrophobic, and it's an uncomfortable feeling for someone who's a free spirit, for someone who's an artist, even for someone who's a leader manager who loves reveling in the fact, because like new age leader managers are talent acquisition recognition specialists. They see people go, oh, they have a knack for this. Doesn't mean they love doing it, but they even ask people to go, okay, so Jane Doe, Jane, would you mind taking this task? I know that you don't love doing this stuff, but you are so brilliant at it. So I would love if you wouldn't mind mentoring someone else. So that way, once you get through it, you can hand it off. But we're going to pay you handsomely for it. And the training, this person, they don't need to report to you. I would just love for you to impart your wisdom to them. Now, here's what's really cool about that. Number one, we're thanking them. Number two, they're getting compensated for it. Number three, they're being acknowledged that they have an amazing skill. Even though they don't love doing it, they're brilliant at it. And it's like, wow, that's really cool. I don't mind. So,
do you think employees have maybe not enough patience sometimes, though, to really see the value that they are getting out of a role? You mentioned like how it used to be you'd stay with there someplace till you retired or something, and I admit, like, the longest I've ever been somewhere besides my current role is like 3.5 years. So I very much was in that kind of,
sure.
went from role to role. But how much is it just because we've lost some grit and determination that maybe we do need a little bit of that back and have a balance?
I would say it actually feeds a different narrative. So let's go back into what we were just discussing about progress equals happiness, and then possibilities equal progress. And so when people are looking for the possibilities, they don't want to stay in the past. So their history, that's not a mystery to them. It's history. They're letting it go. And most people associate pain to their past. So they're like, well, I don't need to stay here. I'm growing now. And if as so long as, and this is where it gets a little, I'll say, clouded, gray matter, is that if we're continuing to grow at a pace of our expectation, and the community and the culture is growing at the pace that we're expanding as well, then you'll find people who stay longer because they're highly compensated, they're increasing value, and they're compensated accordingly for it, i.e. the Tim Cooks of the world who continue to cultivate and grow through Apple. They've stayed with them. My brother's been with them now for almost 20 years, amazingly enough. And he was an independent, same thing, left, did his own thing, made millions and millions and millions of dollars. And then finally one day, and this is while Steve Jobs was still alive, they coaxed him. And true story, so my brother's in line getting lunch, and this person keeps bumping into him. And he's like, and so Tom finally turns around and he goes, "Can I help you?" And it's Steve Jobs. And he goes, "Hey, I hear we've been chasing you for a while." He goes, "Yes, sir." Because it's a pleasure to meet you. He goes, "Likewise." He goes, "Can I ask why you were so stubborn?" And my brother turns to him and says, "You couldn't afford me." And he started laughing. They had a 2-hour conversation after that. And this is day one, by the way, on the job. And he goes, I really do need to get back. He goes, "I know the boss. You're fine." So why do I go there? This was one of those instances where you have a divergent thinker in someone like Steve Jobs, who really is intrigued by the individuals and like, we're Apple. Why would you hold out on us? You're crazy. And my brother's like, "No, my freedom, my independence. And until you gave me a number and stock options that leveled to my point of expectation." And then this gets to where, to your point, what we're missing is expectations that are founded in reality. I'm actually finding that millennials and zennials are actually connected to a much more holistic, value-oriented state of being and ideology, where they actually acknowledge how they're feeling most often. And it's not just about the money, it's not just about the doing. Because why? Well, they're actually taking action and moving towards things. Their attire that they wear, the comfort of the shoes, the outfit, so on and so forth. They're not there to just impress. They're there to feel comfortable in their own skin and express themselves, from the types of frames that they wear on their glasses, to the color of their hair, to the adornments and that they wear as far as earrings and jewelry and so on and so forth. And name brands have less to do with identity than comfort. And it's like, but I've never met anyone in a suit that goes, "Oh yes, this thing hiked up to my neck and a tie done all the way up. Oh, this is my power comfort outfit." No, it's your power suit, because there's this interpretation that this is the level of impact that it creates within an environment. There's an expectation. I'm a power attorney. And I go, okay. And yet I watch lawsuits on TV now, and these guys are wearing plaid suits. There's no such thing as a power tie. They have a huge paisley. Some have skinny ties. I go, oh, Buckaroo Banzai. This guy escaped from like a 1980s movie. And so, but we live in a culture now where anything done tastefully is acceptable. As long as you're not offending someone. They say, "Oh, that's their unique personality." Haircuts, hairstyles, handlebar mustaches. I'm like, those are a thing again? As someone who can't really grow facial hair. It's my half Japanese genetics. It doesn't allow me to grow facial hair. But so to the point of your question, I don't know that we've lost it. I'll say that there's a different focus as far as expectation and the conditioning that's going on within educational environments as well. There's no co-elevation anymore in education. They talk about collaborative learning, and for years they're like, "Do your own work, You do, we need to see your work. We need to see what you do. And I go, and yet when you get out in the workforce, you can say, okay, it's not all on you. Collaborate with your team. Go. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. You just spent all this formidable years of education formatting people with a certain operating system. And then you're like, oh, what do you mean? You're not a PC, you're iOS. We can do the same things, but there's this translation that needs to occur in order for that to happen. Some people are getting it faster, some aren't so much. Mm-hmm. And so this is more a matter of communication. And to your point, I don't know that it's companies don't offer the same benefits. They're just different benefits. It's a different setup. And I go, I get it, but there's three things that end up lacking from this. One, corporate identity. You can have corporate branding, which is different than corporate identity. Corporate branding is that product has a reputation and it has a level of expectation associated to it. The person, not so much. So use the example of Apple. When I go in an Apple store, I don't care if it's in Beijing, Tokyo, San Francisco, Dallas, Texas, Los Angeles, New York City. I'm going to pretty much have the same experience in every single one of them.
Yeah.
Why? They're set up the same. The logistics are the same. Now, what will vary is the personality of the person I get to engage with. Okay, given. So this is where when we onboard talent and we start to realize, oh, they have capacity, they have skill set, they have know-how, and oh my gosh, they do it with a smile. A whole ton of them comes through. So
what do you think there, companies like, for instance, T-Mobile, who, they have a script for how, when people call, right, they have very specific things you're supposed to say, and you're supposed to be done within a certain time frame, otherwise your score goes down. Or Chick-fil-A, they all say the same thing at the end. What do you where do you find the balance, or do you think there needs to be a balance in where you're letting people's personality shine versus when you're trying to create a set experience so people can have predictability when they go between New York and Sydney, Australia?
Sure. Well, part of it's KPIs. What are the key performance indicators that are actually being measured? Are we actually measuring client engagement happiness? What was the demeanor? What was the disposition? They always ask, oh, were you satisfied? Specifically how? You fixed the problem, but they were a jerk. It's like, oh, okay. Was that a personnel issue? Is it a culture issue? There are certain things that I will say must nevers, must always be done. Must never be rude, disconcerting, disavowing. There's no quarter for that. Must always be courteous, be kind, be inquisitive. And people go, why? Said, if you're in customer service, that is the exact title of that position. So in doing so, we get to, no one has to, you can move on to another position. We get to see someone's talent. So someone will take an amazing technician as an example and put them in customer service and go, they can fix anything. I said, they're great at fixing. They're not great at engagement. So they may be deplorable on their personal score and exceptional in getting the job done. And it's like, why? Because they have the fastest turnover rate. They move more equipment. They get things excised and done. They have the fewest amount of returns. And so people that go, wow, they got me in and out quick. Now, if you're a nuts and bolts person, you love that person. If you're a 73-year-old grandmother who doesn't know how to use her iPad, and now you have someone who's walking you through and they're taking their time, you're like, oh my gosh, they were the sweetest soul. They took care of me and they answered all my questions. And I had about 50 of them. So part of it is when you are onboarding people, it would be beautiful to see, and this is where AI is taking things now, is pattern recognition, inflection of voice, tonality. And to your point, like on a script, only 7% of communication is spoken linguistics. That's it, 7%. The rest of it is energy, timbre, pace, inflection, and if you want to call it intent. So someone can say, oh, you're so silly. And you'll take it as, oh, that's kind of jovial and almost playful. And you go, now you're being silly. Oh, well, that sounded kind of brash and rude. How dare you, young man, you cheeky little brat. It's like, wait a second. What just happened? Same verbiage. The challenge becomes is that when there are scripts, what makes words powerful is the way that they're delivered and the intent and energy behind them. It's kind of like when they say knowledge is power. Well, knowledge in a script and having this information, a skill set is one thing. So if knowledge is a weight, the only time I build muscle is if I actually lift it, if I actually use it. I can use it in a multiplicity of different ways to get different benefits, but it's still just a skill or a tool. And what I'm finding now, to your point, is what there's a huge lack of is experience. I'm seeing a ton of people armed with a plethora of tools and skill, and what they lack is experience. And that's where we need mentorship. This is where, going back to the old school of people training and getting different distinctions and a multiplicity of different ways of learning the same data, because repetition is the mother of all skill. You don't get better at hitting a tennis ball by hitting it one time. So to your point, there are loopholes within organizations. And in this ever-changing climate of what business looks like and how to keep market share, how to keep talent acquisition, how to maintain marketplace and identity, it's a fine balancing act between sales and marketing. It also means how the sales and marketing internally and externally. How do we keep people inside? How do we make sure that they're happy? Because we'll bend and move heaven and earth for a client, won't we? Like, we'll do surveys and we'll send out accolades and feedback models. And yet many companies don't do that internally. It's like, well, why don't we adopt a Richard Branson ideology then? He goes, hey, mate, feel free to fire a client. He goes, no one goes after my employees. It's like, wait, what? He goes, we put so much time and energy in vetting and hiring the right people that sometimes the client is not right. And we give full autonomy to our people to be able to make those determinations. Doesn't mean that we're not going to have human error. We're human beings. That's how we learn. I'm a lifelong learner, and that's called mistakes. I have a PhD in screw ups. True story. My wife's in the next room. You can ask her, and she'll go, oh yes, dear, he does. And here's what's brilliant. I learn from every single engagement. So part of this is allowing people the gift to fall and fail and not be uberly judgmental, where it becomes this precedent of dismissal. Oh, I'm writing you up. Oh, you give them fair warning. It's like, whoa. Do you expect them to be right all the time? Is that your KPI? Is that your metric? What's your percentage of attrition? The fault factor, if you will. Well, they didn't do it intentionally, so there was no malice or misintent, but screw-ups are going to happen with or without you. Change is going to happen whether or not you jump on the bandwagon or not. That's just called life. In evolution, I've never met a plant yet that didn't have an aspiration to grow. So
yeah, sorry.
No, please.
Well, so because we're getting close on time, but one of the things I wanted the chance to ask you is talking, the importance of alignment, value alignment, and what that really means to you around what does it mean to have alignment between employees and the company's values?
Sure. So when we realize that there's an old saying that the road to success was paved with good intention. And I don't believe that anyone is ever operating out of a negative space or trying to be subversive or a problem. And we're always going to have outliers, people that are mismatchers who are just trying to find their way. They just think and process differently. And thank goodness, because those people help us see our blind spots. And so what I would say is that for most companies, I would ask if they actually have a code of conduct, curriculum, and if they actually have a motive and an intention. Some people call it a mission statement, but that's actually more based on doings, not about being. See, there's a saying I developed many years ago. I said, you can be doing your best, but never being your best. When you're being your best, you'll always do your best. And so there's a difference between a state of being, and when we can promote people's individuality and that we revel in them and that we actually take a genuine interest. They go, well, this isn't a dating service. I said, I'm not promoting that it should be. But when Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, no one cares what you have to say until they know how much you care, it's really true. And I think it was Maya Angelou that said, people don't care what you have to say, or excuse me, people forget what you said, they'll even forget what you did, they'll always remember how you made them feel. So when there's a level of caring, when the HR department or the talent acquisition officer on board is hiring and bringing people on board, are we hiring for pedigree or are we hiring for value alignment? Because when we know that people are buying into this larger vision, and this is exactly like who takes on the automobile industry? Who takes on NASA? This crazy guy. And so they are kind of like the old Stephen Jobs regime of, hey, we're pirates. We're gonna take it to Microsoft and IBM and everyone else in the world. Why? Because they had a different ideology. And people love that kind of rebel nature. So to your point, value alignment is very simple, that the company acknowledges their needs. And when people feel this way, trust, loyalty, here's the number one thing. The number one need that the human condition has is to feel secure and safe. So when we can, So when we can propagate this kind of environment, people are going, oh, I feel safe to speak my voice and not be judged for it. So I'm going to use a term that's going to be maybe somewhat controversial, but it's called being an ask hole, ASKHOLE. And this has become quite common. People will ask, and then whatever they say goes in this black hole. They didn't ask because they really wanted to know. They asked because, oh, that's what the protocol says. That's what the SOP says. I'm supposed to ask and denote and then get feedback. It's like, well, is it actionable? Are you doing anything with it? Because don't ask me for my opinion when you don't garner me and the value that I bring. You're doing it out of process and not the intent. And this is where I say the value alignment's off. And we have a vast rift in communication.
No, that's interesting. Well, we've covered quite a lot of ground. Chuck, I'd love to hear what 3 things you want to leave top of mind with folks is, though.
The first one I would say, look in the mirror today and just give appreciation for the beautiful soul that's staring back at you. You're not broken, and no one needs to change. If you're making a commitment to growing yourself, to expanding yourself, I would ask you to refer to it in a different way. And that is, you don't need a better life, because all you're really looking for is different options. See, the minute we start to say, I need better, I need more, then we've judged what we have as not being enough. And the truth is, if you're listening to this today, you have more than enough. If you're engaged and sharing in this beautiful opportunity that you give to all your listeners and people who are viewing this, then you don't need to shift. You get to, because you have a desire to meet your best self. And the last thing I would say is, if you're really looking to make progress and grow, get into the habit of time blocking. Schedule out time for yourself for self-care. Most people will give the best of them to everyone else, and then they'll accept what's left of them. And I made a statement probably 20 years ago now. I said, my family and I deserve the best of me and not what's left of me.
Absolutely. Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, and to our audience, until next time, before I go there, sorry, where can folks find out more about what you do or get in contact with you?
Oh, sure. So I actually am a co-founder of an organization, a community called Your Best Life. And it's literally about this. We are business strategists that are mentor strategists, and we work in 4 fields: faith, family, fitness, and finance. It's all about, because they're all tethered together. And if any one of these is floundering, it literally holds and impedes your development in all these other areas. So our expertise is actually converting people from being just business operators to business owners and giving them more net time so that they can actually find the freedom that they seek and enjoy their really life, and not just live in survival, but in thrive.
Excellent. Well, we'll include all of that in the show notes. And so thanks again for being a part of the show.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.
And to our audience, until next time, keep your organizations healthy.
Hey!